I'm about to give you an insider look at the actual forms that Atlanta real estate agents use to get your offer accepted. Here's 10 ways that we do it. Okay, so this is a standard purchase and sale agreement that is a form from the Georgia Association of Realtors and is the standard contract for submitting an offer when purchasing a home. You can see at the top there, the first box is all about the property and the location of the property. We got the address, the legal description, but the first thing that we're going to talk about here is the 10% rule for the purchase price. In Georgia, everybody knows that the real estate market here is super hot. And when somebody's selling their home, they have a list price. Let's say that list price is $500,000. Really, the home will inevitably sell for more than the list price. And so many people want to know, what does it take to win that multiple offer situation? How much do you have to offer above list price to win that home? And typically in Georgia, and especially around Atlanta, it's about 10%. So in box number 2, if the list price of the home is about $500,000, we would suggest to the client making an offer of about $550,000, which is 10% above the list price. And then moving down to box number 4, the closing date and possession. This seems like a pretty simple item here. What date are you wanting to close? But really the secret here is in the date of possession, not necessarily the closing date. So if you look at the bottom of this box number 4 here, you can see that the property is to be transferred to the buyer either at closing or a certain number of days after closing. Many times when a seller is selling their home, they're looking for a new home to buy. And for many people who are considering selling, the idea of having to buy a home after selling is super daunting. So when a buyer offers 2 or 3 weeks, even a month, for the seller to live in the home after closing and give them time to find their next home, it is a huge relief for the seller and gives that buyer a huge advantage over other buyers. Okay, let's skip down to box number 6, earnest money. Earnest money is like a deposit that you make when you submit an offer. It shows the seller that you're serious about buying the home, and it shows the seller that you're capable of buying the home. Traditionally, earnest money has been about 1% of the purchase price. So if you're making an offer of $500,000 or $550,000, you would submit earnest money of about $5,000, and that earnest money would be held by a third party, usually the closing attorney. And then if you back out of the contract within a certain amount of time, you can keep that deposit. But if you continue with the contract and you close, obviously that deposit goes to the purchase price of the home. So in this super hot real estate market, what many agents are suggesting to their clients is that they do earnest money of 2 or even 3% of the purchase price. On a $500,000 home, that would be $10,000 or $15,000 deposit. Again, all of that money goes to the purchase price of the home. It goes to the down payment, which you would be making anyways. And again, if you're backing out of the contract within the appropriate amount of time, you can keep that money as well. So it doesn't necessarily hurt if you're playing your cards right to increase the amount of earnest money that you're making when submitting an offer. Okay, box number 8, inspection and due diligence. This really is the most important time frame when talking about that earnest money or that deposit. You can see there on line A that the property is being sold subject to a due diligence period, which is really just another way of saying an inspection period for a certain amount of days from the binding agreement date. The binding agreement date is just the day that everybody signs the contract and agrees. So traditionally, the due diligence period has been about 7 or 10 days to do a home inspection. But in this market, what many real estate agents are suggesting to their clients is that we keep that due diligence as low as possible. It's very possible to have an inspector out to the home in 1 or even 2 days and have that report back. And so 3 days is totally doable for a due diligence period and assures the seller that you are not only serious about buying the home, but you're not going to waste their time. Okay, stay with me now because things are about to get really interesting. If we skip down on the purchase and sale agreement to page number 7, at the bottom of the page, there's a section that says special stipulations. This is a super important section here because you can really get creative in this part of the contract and really show the seller that you're serious about buying the home. One thing that we suggest to clients is using an escalation clause here. An escalation clause states that the offer you're making is $500,000 with a maximum of, let's just say, $550,000. If the seller is to use your maximum of $550,000, they have to reveal the next lowest offer that is just below $550,000. Okay, the next document that we're going to look at is the loan contingency exhibit. In the hierarchy of offers in real estate, cash offer is really the best kind of offer that you can make. Below that would be a conventional loan offer, and then below that would be FHA or VA. The reason that many sellers don't want to accept a VA loan or an FHA loan is because those loans have tighter requirements for being able to purchase a home. They typically have their specific appraiser, or sometimes they'll have a specific inspector come out to look at the home, and if the inspector or the appraiser doesn't agree with something that's in the purchase and sale contract, it can really make the contract process a lot more difficult and maybe even cause the buyer and seller to terminate their contract. Whereas with a conventional loan, those kind of requirements are not nearly as stringent, and so it's a lot easier to have that contract process go all the way through to close with a conventional loan. The first thing we should look at is line number 5, the financing contingency. Buyer shall have X number of days from the binding agreement date to determine if buyer has ability to obtain a loan. This financing contingency really goes back to the earnest money or the deposit that we talked about earlier. If the buyer has 28 days to obtain a loan, we would put 28 days there for the financing contingency. If during that time the buyer's loan gets denied, the buyer can terminate the contract and keep their earnest money. But one way to get an advantage over other buyers is to not do necessarily 28 days of financing contingency, but maybe do 21 days or even 14 days. Many lenders can do 14 days for an approval for your loan, and putting 14 days there in line number 5 is a big advantage over other buyers. And then a huge tip here is getting your loan application through underwriting, not just a pre-approval. Don't wait to go under contract for the underwriter to start looking at all of your documents. Make sure that the underwriter looks at those before you find a home. This is a big advantage over other buyers. You could even put 0 days for your financing contingency, and this is a very big advantage over other buyers that need 21 or 14 days to obtain a loan. And then moving down to item number 11 on the loan contingency exhibit, we're talking about the appraisal contingency. When you go under contract on a home and you're using a loan, the lender obviously wants to make sure that the home that you're buying is worth the amount of money that you're offering. So the lender will send out an appraiser to the home, and let's say the appraiser determines that the home is worth $500,000. Now we have a problem with the buyer and the seller because they have agreed on a purchase price of $550,000, but the lender is saying, nah, actually the home is only worth $500,000. To avoid this problem and give the buyer a huge advantage over other buyers, one thing that we suggest to our clients is to make an offer with an appraisal gap. The appraisal gap goes back in that special stipulations box that we talked about earlier, and it states that if the appraisal comes in below our hypothetical offer of $550,000, the buyer will supplement that low appraisal with $10,000 up to a maximum of $550,000. Another big one is if you're coming from out of state and you're looking to buy a home here in Georgia, you really want to avoid making a blind offer. A blind offer would be like making an offer on a home that you have not seen in person. Many sellers don't like accepting offers that are blind offers because they would be afraid that the buyer would make the offer, go under contract, and then come look at the home and decide, we don't actually like the home now that we're seeing it in person. So they really try to avoid accepting blind offers. One thing that you can do to prevent this problem is to have an agent go out to the home, give you a video tour of the home so that you are seeing it and you're really seeing the details of the home, but more importantly, you are having an agent log you and the agent into the Supra log. Supra is a company that real estate agents use not only to have like a lockbox for the keys to enter homes when we're doing showings, but it also logs every person that comes in and out of the home. So it shows the seller and the listing agent that we have in fact been there, we have in fact seen the home, and this is not a blind offer. And then proof of funds is super important if you're making a cash offer, but also important if you're making an offer with a loan to show the seller that you can afford any cash deposits that you're offering. If you're moving to Atlanta, there's also 5 things you really need to know about. Make sure you check out this video so you don't miss any of them.